The United States worries Iran is building a nuclear weapon. Iran has been uncooperative with weapons inspectors and stubborn about halting uranium enrichment, which is the first step to building a nuke. Meanwhile, the country stalls negotiations and conducts ostentatious weapons tests. When it comes to controlling a wannabe nuclear state, superpowers have three options: beg, bomb, or sanction. Since Iran won't take America's calls and nobody is ready to make war, the US is left with only one choice: hitting Iran's economy. Here's everything you need to know about what it takes to sanction Iran and why it's taking so long in 4 minutes. Some in Congress want to go the unilateral route and just add new sanctions to the limits the US already has on the Islamic nation. But Obama wants to take a multilateral approach and team up with other UN members to crush Ahmadinejad's nuclear dreams. The road to sanctions is long, and the Security Council is the group with the final say. The Council is made up of 5 permanent members: the US, the UK, France, Russia, and China. Next to them sit 10 rotating members who spend 2 years representing a particular region. To approve sanctions, 9 folks around the table must vote yes, including all 5 permanent members. A no vote from any of the 5 kills the plan. Still, the UN has already passed 3 rounds of sanctions, in 2006, 7, and 8, after Iran made it clear it would continue enriching uranium. Now the Security Council is in talks for a 4th round of sanctions, and already the member countries are back to bickering about them. The US is the most gung-ho of the bunch. It has the longest-standing beef with Iran, from when Islamic revolutionaries stormed the US embassy in 1979, taking more than 60 American hostages. The next day, Ayatollah Khomeini dubbed the US the Great Satan. The US hit back with sanctions, suspending oil imports and freezing government assets. Iran went to war with Iraq in the 80s. Since the US was Iraq's ally at the time, America slammed down more unilateral sanctions. In the 90s, Clinton accused Iran of sponsoring terrorism. Again, sanctions. Then, in 2002, President George W. Bush named Iran part of the Axis of Evil.
Axis of Evil.
One of 3 governments that the administration charged with giving support to terrorists and looking to build nukes. By now, all trade and investment with Iran is prohibited, except for food, Persian rugs, informational materials, and gifts under $100. The second key player on the Security Council is Europe, where member countries France and the UK often work in tandem. Europe tends to play the good cop to America's bad cop. In 2002, the US tried to get the EU to push for sanctions by sharing intelligence about a secret Iranian nuclear facility. But as a major exporter to Iran, the Europeans had a lot of money to lose. They didn't bite and instead tried to negotiate their way out of the mess. When Iran kept defying Security Council demands that it quit enrichment activities, the UK and France backed all 3 rounds of UN sanctions and then convinced the EU to levy their own additional restrictions. Hesitant to sign on to a 4th round, the UK and France changed their minds when yet another secret nuclear facility was revealed in late 2009. Now they're definitely on board for another round at the UN. In case you thought things were getting easy, along comes Russia, the second biggest sanctions spoiler on the Security Council. They say they might not want more sanctions. That's because they have close ties with Iran. Russia sells old military planes and arms to Iranians and builds their nuclear sites. They also have joint oil and gas projects. Now, Russia's stuck in the awkward position of trying to build a more positive relationship with the US while managing its interests in Iran. In the end, without Russian support, sanctions are dead. In early 2010, Russia urged Iran to accept a UN compromise. Iran said no, and Moscow jumped on board with the rest of the Security Council, as long as sanctions target the Iranian government, not civilians. Most of all, there's China. The People's Republic is the party of no on the Council. They see sanctions as bullying, and having been subject to a Western arms embargo for the last 20 years, they're kinda sensitive about sanctions in general. The Chinese also have strong financial ties to Tehran. They import nearly 12% of their oil from Iran and plan to build a pipeline that'll bring over gas, too. So each time sanctions come up, China dilutes them before giving its stamp of approval. When the current round of talks began, China gave a flat-out NO, expecting fellow naysayer Russia would have its back. But Russia has suggested it may stay quiet, in which case China would probably cave. Then, the US could push through the crippling sanctions it has promised. Or, Iran could cut a deal with the Security Council fence-sitters, skewering US sanctions plans. Either way, sanctions won't necessarily end the fight to control Iran's nuclear desires. As more than 30 years of trying seems to show, sanctions do not necessarily equal nuclear cooperation.